I'd like to just outline very briefly the elements of what I believe can be done in the areas of energy. This chart here indicates the amount of barrels per day that we import in 1980. It's 8 million barrels per day. And over here represents the Kennedy Durkin proposal on energy to back off some 6.6 million barrels per day. I also favor a rationing program that would ration gasoline to the extent that it would mean that you would reduce the amount of gasoline consumption that you use by 1/4 over the period of 3 years. The amount of gasoline that you would receive would be based upon historic use. Those that come from states that don't have mass transportation would be given more than those in which states do have mass transportation. It would mean that you'd use gasoline, as I said, over a period of 3 years, the end of 3 years, 1/4 of the amount that you'd use today. If you were fortunate to be able to buy a new car, it actually means that there'd only be a reduction of about 12.5%. Now, this is the program of how we would achieve the 6.5 million barrels a day. 500,000 barrels a day with what we call synthetic fuels. That means transforming coal, shale, tar sands from their substance to petroleum product that could be used for either heating oil or for gasoline. Coal conversion from oil-fired plants to coal-fired plants. Solar and hydro. The people of New Hampshire know about hydro. You have some 660 sites that could be used for low-head hydro to increase your energy production. And there's important opportunities as well in the area of solar energy in New Hampshire, as well as all New England states. I visited the Audubon House up in just outside of Portland, Maine, which is using very substantially the solar, passive solar, and to heat their building. And we can do that with low-head hydro and also solar power. The residential, commercial, and industrial, what do we mean by that? We mean by providing incentives to homeowners to insulate their homes. Senator Durkin and I believe that we want to reduce the amount of energy you use, but keep the price down. Administration will reduce the amount of energy you use by raising the price. It seems to me we can achieve our objective of reducing the amount of oil that is necessary, but do it in a way that isn't going to bankrupt working people and elderly people, needy people. Commercial and industrial modernization, what does that mean? Let me give you an example. Japan produces a ton of steel using 40% less energy than the United States. We can modernize our plants and factories in the industrial area and also provide important incentives in the commercial area to reduce the amount of energy. So with that particular program and gasoline rationing, we can back off the amount of 8 million barrels a day and really do it in a way which I think warrants the support, I'll leave that here, of the people of New Hampshire and the rest of the country. So this kind of an issue should be debated and discussed. Mr. Carter would go for an $88 billion synthetic fuels program. And I believe that that is an unwarranted commitment of your taxpayers' money for untried technologies. It seems to me that we ought to try and test the synthetic fuel technologies before we go into that type of a commitment. So I would hope that over the course of these next several days, that young people, others, would take this election seriously, that they would become involved. New Hampshire has a proud tradition of independence, of individuals who make up their own mind. I'm hopeful that the people of this state are going to say, well, we're glad to see you, Mr. Kennedy. We'd like to ask you questions, but we also like to ask Mr. Carter questions on the basis of his record in energy and the economy, and also in foreign policy. I regret that opportunity will not be available Although Mr. Carter is clearly involved in conducting a campaign, he dispatches the cabinet officials, he dispatches White House aides, he dispatches members of his family. He will be calling perhaps you on the phone over the period of these next 2 weeks, but he will not come to New Hampshire. He will not come to talk to you about these proposals. He'll not come here to answer your questions. And I think the people of New Hampshire are entitled to something better. I think they deserve response to the questions in which they have. And I'm, even that young one back there is entitled to the responses. So I welcome the chance of being here, and perhaps in the time that is available, either I or Senator Durkin, if you'd like to ask John a question, or myself would be glad to respond to the questions which you might have in mind. Yes?
Yeah, I'd like to know, on the draft, is there any, on the registration, what is your opinion?
Questions on the registration of the draft, I'm opposed to it. I wouldn't hesitate to support, yeah, you can applaud up there, right, or not, it depends, or you can do it. I would not hesitate to support legislation to provide adequate personnel should there be a national emergency. The type of system I'd support would be a random selection system. But I do not believe that we need that at this particular time. Total amount of time that's saved by the implementation of a registration system amounts to approximately 2 weeks. That can be made up for by a more efficient and effective selective service system. I think also that could be an issue which could be debated. The President has the power to reimpose registration unilaterally. If he wants a peacetime draft, what would be the purposes that we would use the increased personnel power? Would they be used in the Persian Gulf? Under what circumstances? Are they going to be used in other parts of the world? What are going to be the circumstances? I think we ought to decide where our interests lie, what we're prepared to do, and then apply our manpower or personnel power to that particular challenge, and not reverse the decision making. Yes. Question on the Olympic boycott. My original position was that we should send our athletes over there to win all the gold medals. The Congress and the Senate have gone on record strongly for the movement or the changing of the Olympic position, and I'm not objecting to it. I'd want to debate and discuss the essential aspects of American foreign policy and not the symbols of it. Yes. Well, the question on how Mr. Carter is handling the Iranian situation, I am very hopeful that we can exhaust every possibility at negotiating a successful release of the hostages. I think men and women of this country, those that hold positions of responsibility as well as those that just have ideas, should be encouraged to make recommendations about how we could possibly see a successful negotiation that would speed the hostages to their families. I don't think individual Americans should be silenced at this time, or really at any time. I do believe that 102 days is long enough. We will not be intimidated. We will not be intimidated, nor will we be blackmailed, but we should also not be silenced in trying to put forward suggestions or recommendations that may be sufficiently valuable or useful or worthwhile that they could be accepted as a basis for a successful negotiation that would speed the hostages home.